Well, this is a section that I'm calling Tips and Tricks for Greg's Sourdough. First thing is full disclosure. This is the first loaf of bread that we turned out. This was the second loaf of bread. Looks almost the same, except you'll see that the bottom stuck to the pan. That doesn't happen very often, but it happens to all of us. Just to let you know, don't expect perfection. Stay with it, make it work, and make it your own. A few things to share. I wanted to show you about sourdough starter. I have 4 different ones here that are always in the refrigerator, and I wanted to show you how to feed your starter. I'm not going to explain how to get it. Borrow a starter from somebody. Get a starter. People are willing to share their starter, and then you can use that starter. If you like it, you can make your own starter. Look it up online. You can find out more than you ever wanted to know about starter. I have 4 of them here. Every single one of them, to me, smells a little different. They will say, or it is said, they're all the same. It's just yeast. You can say that, but I think you'll find that it may be just yeast, but it sure doesn't seem like the same yeast. Feeding it, 1 cup of flour, half a cup of water. Mix it up with a fork. Remember here, it's the only time that fork touches your sourdough is when you're mixing the flour and water to feed the sourdough or to bulk up your sourdough starter. So I've got this mixed up, and I use the proportion 1 cup of flour to a half a cup of water in order to keep all of my batters and dough the same approximate consistency. It just makes the process of making bread a lot easier. There it is. It's all mixed up. It looks fairly smooth. And to feed my starter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one that's running down, not looking very active, and I dump out a fair portion of the starter right into the compost. This one has been sitting in the fridge for a while. It's not seeming very happy. Should be nice and bubbly. Look, it's almost empty, but there's still the yeast cells inside this container, to which I'm going to add the new dough that I just created. So in it goes. We'll mix it in here. And this is feeding the sourdough. Now, while I'm doing that, let me talk to you about making different kinds of bread. You can make white bread like we did in this video, but you can also make a whole wheat bread. To make the whole wheat bread, I have whole wheat here in this container. You just take 1 cup of the flour that you used to make your bread dough when you did 4 cups, 2 cups of water, 4 cups of flour. 1 of those 4 cups of flour, you're going to substitute in a cup of whole wheat. And that'll make a nice whole wheat bread. I think you'll like the flavor, and the way it rises is very nice. Come on. There we go. So this is ready to go back in the refrigerator. You can leave it out on the counter if you want. It'll bubble away for a while, and then you can put it in the refrigerator. But I find if you put it directly in the refrigerator after you feed it like this, then it's ready to sit in the refrigerator for a matter of weeks before you have to make your next loaf of bread. I make so many loaves of bread that I have multiple starters. A beer starter from the neighbor. I have 2 of my Grandma Beulah's starters that I keep all the time. Sometimes one of them will go bad and I have to throw it out, but I always have a second one. And then I have another that I got from son-in-law Todd. He made this down in California. So I have a whole variety of starters. Just depending on my mood, I make different kinds of bread. Another thing in the tips and tricks, invest in a scale. You'll find that a scale will help you make consistent bread, and you don't have to deal with the question of, is the dough too slack? Is the dough too stiff? Did I put too much water in? The problem that you will run into with making sourdough bread is that the difference between just right and not right is only a tablespoon or so of water. And so when you're at that critical of a point, it's much easier to use a scale to get it right every time, and you can adjust it to the kind of bread you're making, and that just simplifies life. One other thing that you might want to think about after you make your own sourdough, there's only certain butters that are worthy of your sourdough. Trader Joe's has a cultured butter. It comes from France. Oh, it's really quite nice. If you've ever been to Ireland, Kerrygold makes a beautiful, beautiful yellow butter. I'll leave that one out. And if you're lucky enough to have a neighbor like we do, Bridget, and a cow named Frida, she makes her own butter. And this is cultured butter that comes right off the farm. These are worthy to put on your sourdough bread. And of course, we're left with just the last thing about making sourdough bread. You do this. Invest in a good bread knife. And then take the butter and add it to the bread and have a bite. And you'll go, that's why I make sourdough bread. It's a joy. Been a pleasure working with you and teaching you how I make sourdough bread. If you learn something new and discover something great, let me know. I'm always willing to add it to what we do.